We're asking all the toughest questions so that we can get inside their heads. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for tuning in on Sunday night to Fresh FM. I am your host, D.D. Benz, for our new pilot episode tonight of Politically Inclined, our regular Sunday night show featuring 1 hour long talk about politics and the things that concern us as the people here in Canada. Tonight in studio, we have a very special guest live in studio with us, Joshua Blakeney from Press TV. Josh, how you doing tonight?
Yeah, it's great to be here with you, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. We're glad to have you. So, Josh, start off, tell us a little bit about your involvement with Press TV, a little bit about your history in journalism, and how you came to be known as the infamous Mr. Blakeney that everybody's talking about.
Yes, well, I emigrated to Canada from the UK in 2005 and embarked upon a sociology degree, and by 2010 that degree had culminated, and I had befriended a professor at the University of Lethbridge named Anthony Hall, and he is somebody who has investigated what did and did not happen on 9/11, along with a slew of professors in Canada and dozens of professionals, if not thousands, around the world. The group Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth itself contains 1,700 members, architects and engineers who've looked into what did and did not happen on 9/11. So as a result of the reality that many professionals in the academy and outside have stopped and taken a look at what transpired on 9/11, obviously that was a seminal event, Professor Hall said to me, why don't I do graduate work under him? Why don't I study what did and did not happen on 9/11 and in an academic context and such? And so that's what we proceeded with doing. And obviously, when you begin to embark upon a controversial subject in your academic inquiry, that's going to garner the attention of those, especially in the media, who don't want controversial subject matter to be addressed. And obviously, if the official story of 9/11 turned out to be false, we would have been basing our foreign policy, for example, on a false premise, the idea that there's these crazy Muslims who want to kill us. And so I received a prestigious scholarship, the Queen Elizabeth II Scholarship, to do my studies, and the National Post found out. And that's kind of where it all starts. The National Post decides to make national news out of my research. That makes me a lot of friends, because when you get attacked by the powers that be, a lot of people like you and feel that you're being subversive. And so as a result, I started getting invited on Press TV shows. Press TV is a 24-hour news station based in Tehran. So currently, Iran is kind of one of those countries that's on death row. It's being demonized and vilified for one reason or another in public opinion in the West. And so I enjoyed going on Press TV shows. Obviously, people will have heard of Al Jazeera in the Middle East, which is based in Qatar. So increasingly, as media becomes more affordable and more people are able to purchase cameras and set up TV stations, there's going to be a plurality of viewpoints. Before, that was the case that you sort of had one or two capitalists who owned all the media, and that was the only way we could get our information. The wonderful thing about the internet too is it's two-dimensional. It's not one-way traffic. We used to just get given our news from the media, and we couldn't throw something back into our TV screens. Now, because of the internet, we're able to do that. And so the ability to do journalism, do media that challenges the prevailing orthodoxy is one of the great privileges I consider of our generation. And so obviously, as I was getting attacked for my research by the mainstream media, I decided to start making YouTubes. I set up a YouTube channel and so on. And I started getting invited on Press TV shows, and that's how they got to know me. And
you also had some recognition early on in your illustrious career as an independent journalist with the National Post. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the media, they obviously use the phrase conspiracy theorist to sort of put you down. It strikes me there's nothing really wrong with having a theory about a conspiracy. A conspiracy is two or more people coming together to plan an illegal act. So it strikes me judges and lawyers on a day-to-day basis are proffering conspiracy theories about conspiracies. But what unfortunately, we have the situation in the media in the West where they're unwilling or unable to actually take seriously the scholarly arguments of professors, for example, like David Ray Griffin, who's written 11 books. You know, he was a world-renowned theologian. He stopped his academic work, along with many professors in Canada too, to say, look, I think if it is the case that 9/11 was an inside job, that's important. We can't just overlook that. And the evidence is so overwhelming. I mean, your listenership can Google Building 7, the 47-story skyscraper, which collapsed in about 6.5 seconds, having been hit by no plane on 9/11, you know. Obviously, when you look into things like that, it shows that the official story of 9/11, the 9/11 Commission report, doesn't really deal with 9/11 properly. The fact that it's an obvious controlled demolition, right? And so, around the world, there's millions and millions of people who have realized that 9/11 appears to have been some kind of false flag incident, some kind of staged, Hollywood-style event to justify the 9/11 wars, the post-9/11 invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan, the ongoing Israeli crusade against the Palestinians. And
so sort of, in a sense, what you were saying, demonizing the foreign nations like Iran, Iraq, and the Middle Eastern countries.
Yeah, the powers that be have a big problem that people don't like war, right? So how do you prepare people, mobilize people, get at least 50% of society on side for sending your military, billions of dollars of taxpayers being squandered on sending your military to foreign countries to invade? Obviously, that requires some persuasion. And, an event like 9/11, it's a psychological operation primarily, right? It's done to make people fear the other, right? And, of course, in the Cold War, we had the status quo, a stable status quo with the Soviet Union, right? Suddenly, the Soviet Union dissipated and was dismantled, and there was no enemy. But you have a situation like in the United States where you have half your military budget, half your tax dollar money going into war, going into the Pentagon. How are you going to justify that without an enemy? Moreover, it appears, and this is where it gets controversial, that Israel's supporters in North America have a lot of political clout. Now, obviously, they have this weapon called the allegation of anti-Semitism, the anti-Semitism card, where if you criticize the Israeli government, which is, in my view, a paranoid, demented government that does war on a almost yearly basis, kills Palestinians, wantonly. But yeah, if you criticize them, you often get compared with like Adolf Hitler because you're an anti-Semite. But, on 9/11, there was Israeli agents with their tripods set up celebrating the towers, the planes hitting the towers, which is very odd. And they were arrested, and some high-up people in the U.S. government got them out. And it's widely believed they were Mossad agents. So,
now, Josh, obviously, not everybody's going to side with you when you say that you're a conspiracy theorist or somebody that's a 9/11 truther, because there are many of us out there. And honestly, I mean, there's people out here looking at some of these blog posts, and it's quite interesting. You Google Joshua Blakeney on Google, and you find a lot of very interesting viewpoints towards yourself as an individual, as a conspiracy theorist, and as an independent journalist for an Iranian-based media company. Here I've got a couple, one calling you a weirdo conspiracy theorist. The Calgary Sun, I think, said it very well when they worded you so choicely as a poster boy for the paranoid and pseudo-scholarly theories. That was the Calgary Sun in December 2012. And actually, even several times now, you've been criticized for stories you've run with Press TV, including one back in December where you made a point. People, I believe, misconstrued that a little bit. So tell us a little bit about that story back in December. What happened with that, and what were they criticizing you about?
Yeah, we have to be logical and rational when we talk about these subjects. So start with 9/11, what you just said. Well, actually, you can't talk about 9/11 unless you're willing to entertain theories about conspiracies, because the official story is itself a quintessential, a paradigmatic conspiracy theory, because it posits that 19 Arabs with box cutters conspired with their friends ensconced in caves in Afghanistan to invade or to outfox the most elaborate and sophisticated national security system on the planet and to commit the events of 9/11. So that's a theory about a conspiracy. Even my detractors have conceded that. I have a different theory that posits an illegal conspiracy. I think it was too sophisticated to have been wholly external. I think it was something that was done by people inside the US. Either way, it's a theory about conspiracy. So when the media demonizes me, they themselves are presupposing the official story, and therefore they are presupposing a theorist about a conspiracy. So when they say conspiracy theories are wacko and nutty, they're kind of criticizing themselves, because there's people who assume the official story's veracity, and that is a quintessential conspiracy theory. So,
yeah, so people who are sort of demonizing you as an independent truther for bringing to light things that people are trying to, the powers that be are sort of trying to keep in the dark. How do you respond to that? How do you respond to people calling you a crazy conspiracy theorist? People saying you're a whack job, a nut job. I guess even a poster boy for the pseudo scholarly and the paranoid.
Well, we look at that phrase, the pseudo-scholarly. Again, that's not true, because I was doing graduate studies on 9/11, and as far as I can see, any academic who was actually stopped, critically evaluated the official, the commission report, the 9/11 commission report, critically evaluated the official story. Any scholar who's done that, I could just name in Canada. Graham McQueen founded peace studies at McMaster. Barry Zwicker used to be one of the Globe and Mail's top journalists. David Ray Griffin, as I said, in the United States, he's a well-respected scholar. I think if you go to the website Patriots Question 9/11, there's more than 1,000 professionals, scholars, right? So it's not accurate to say that those who question 9/11 is pseudo-scholarly. That's just rhetoric or jibes that you expect from so-called journalists who serve the interests of rich people, because unfortunately the media is owned by rich people, invariably. They have a vested interest in suppressing the deep truths, right? Our media can deal with the small injustices, the light injustices, even sometimes the middle injustices. They can criticize politicians for, wasting money on a hotel or something, but they can never really deal with the deep, big injustices, right? Like they say, if you murder one person, you're a criminal, but if you kill 1 million people, you're a statesman, right? And that seems to be how it is. The mass murderers on the planet, the people who kill the millions, they are defended by the mainstream media because the mainstream media is owned by wealthy, well-heeled people. So you asked me about conspiracy theorists. How do I feel being called that? Well, first of all, the official story is a conspiracy theorist. So basically, you have to be ahistorical and not talk about 9/11 if you're going to be avoiding conspiracy theories, because the official story is a theory about conspiracy. You say pseudo-scholarly, I could probably on one hand count the scholars who are willing to defend the official story. In fact, I have a professor who goes around campuses offering $1,000 to anybody who'd debate him defending the official story of 9/11. He's based in Madison, Wisconsin, a former professor at the University of Madison, and no one will take him up on it, because how can you defend Building 7? If people Google Building 7, a 47-story skyscraper collapsing against the path of most resistance, to claim that was little office fires, which if anything would have created an asymmetrical collapse. Defending those pseudo-scientific myths is very hard to do. That's why no one's really willing to do it. So most of the scholars are on the side of 9/11 skepticism. I think a nicer way to call it is 9/11 skepticism, because really we're the skeptics. We're not gullibly accepting the official story of 9/11,
Yeah, and most definitely it seems like a lot of mainstream media is trying to sort of suppress that topic. That being said, Josh, tell us a little bit more about Press TV. As far as in recent months here, it seems like a lot of the mainstream organizations and stuff are putting a lot of sort of pressure on Press TV to sort of back out, and many nations has even been backed out. Tell us a little about Press TV. What do you think is happening there, and why do you think that they're trying to suppress Press TV, who very clearly obviously tells the full truth and the whole story? They're not just telling a half-truth.
Well, they got big lies about Iran being propagated. Like, number one, if you ask most people on the street, is Iran seeking a nuclear weapon, they would obviously say yes. But there's actually no evidence. The leader of Iran, denounces the existence of nuclear weapons on a day-to-day basis. The other thing is, because they're Islamic, they want to portray them as irrational, as erratic, as people who can't be compromised with, right? So when you watch Press TV and you see rational, cogent, sophisticated, erudite, news analysts, and people who are Iranian, acting like us, looking like us, speaking English with a North American accent, that subverts the multi-billion-dollar propaganda that's been spent, if we think of films like Argo, but other means of investing money to delegitimize Iran. Because basically the situation is Iran is one of the only countries in the Middle East that's forging its own path, that's refusing to comply with the dictates of Western governments. So you have a country like Saudi Arabia, right? It's a monarchy. Like Iran actually has elections of sorts. There's no elections in Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia, they're a dictator. So we get told our foreign policy, according to John Baird, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, is motivated by the twin premises of human rights and concerns with democracy. Well, John Baird is friends with Saudi Arabia. He's friends with the United Arab Emirates. In fact, ironically, our foreign minister just flew into the United Arab Emirates, which is a dictatorship, and is bringing Canadian uranium there now, signed a nuclear pact to proliferate nuclear power there. So we're told it's dangerous to have dictators with nuclear weapons or nuclear power, but one of the most dictatorial regimes in the UAE was just gifted a nuclear pact by Canada. Iran had a revolution in 1979. They ousted a dictator that was imposed by the John Bairds of the time, of the Western statesmen of the time. They ousted them, and